Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you the difference between provider, factory, and service in AngularJS. Let me give you some example. Basically, let me show you my code first. Basically, uh, we use provider to if we want our service to be configurable, we use provider. So let me give you an example how to make a provider. Okay. So in provider, basically we need to implement the $get method. And in factory and service, we don't need to implement the $get method. But in provider, it is a mandatory to implement this method. And also in provider, we can access this keyword. In factory, we cannot access this keyword. And also in provider, we can configure the service. We can in provider we can pass the provider instance to config method. For example, like this, my app config, and then we can pass this function, like, then we pass the provider and the implementation. We can do like this in our in provider, but in factory and service we cannot do that. We cannot configure the service. So this is the example of provider. Okay, then next is the factory. Factory, okay, let me test first the provider. Let's see if it works. So we need a controller basically to test the provider service. Get my implementation here. Uh, huh. Okay, this is my controller. So we need this function, my function. This is a simple function just to return the service type and a name. So this simple implementation, we assign it to this function. So basically this function block is an implementation of $sign get method, right? Then this function needs to return an object, which is this one, right? And this object, uh, in this object we are going to implement a function or method, which is this one. Okay, so let me test my provider service. Okay, we delete first this one. So we have a controller to test the provider. Okay, so we have the controller. This is the controller name, my controller. We pass it in our view. We need to map the controller, right? So we use the ng controller directive and pass the controller name, which is this one. Okay, and also same with the module. We use the ng app directive to map with our module, right? This is the module, instance of our module. Okay, then we display our model data. So we need an expression, Angular expression, right, to display it. Okay. The model data is this one, right? So value. So basically our provider service returns a string. This one, the service, we basically concatenate the service type and the name. So in this case, we return this service type, which is provide the example and a hello world. We basically concatenate these two string. Okay. So this is so it basically return a single string. Okay, to our model data. So basically, the function will return provider space provider example space hello world. Okay, let's run and test. See, this is the output. Okay, then the next one is the factory. Let me show you an example of factory. Basically, for factory, we use factory to basically we use factory when for example, we want to encapsulate some details in our implementation. This is very applicable when the logic of our business logic. I mean, when the logic of our service is complex. Sometimes we need to encapsulate the details, right? So this is the the use of factory because factory returns an object. As you can see, it returns an object, right? Unlike in provider, you can see we just need to implement the dollar sign get method. We don't need to return, right? As you can see, just an implementation of this dollar sign. Unlike in factory, we need to return the object here. Okay, that's the main difference. And the factory also don't have access to this keyword. Unlike in provider, you can see we can use the this keyword, right? In factory, we cannot use the this keyword. We just need to in factory we need to return the object which this object can uh, contains encapsulated properties and methods. Okay, so let me test our factory uh, code. Okay, so basically we need to inject the factory here in our controller. Okay, then call the method inside the factory service. We create a model data for this, which we call it value 2. Then my factory instance and call this, let's say, factory example. Okay, so the factory service will return a string. We set it to value 2. Let's display that model, the value in our view. Okay, then let's run and see the output. See, okay, let's put some division here so we can see the output clearly. Okay, let's run again and see the output. Okay, so now we see the output of our provider service and the factory service. So now the difference is clear, right? In provider, we basically need to implement the dollar get method, and we can access the this keyword, and uh, we use provider if we want our service to be configurable. For factory, we need to return an object. We cannot access the this keyword in factory, and we use factory if we want to encapsulate the properties and methods in our object. Okay. Then the next one is the service. Okay, let me give you an example of service. Actually, the service is the most simple among the three. Uh, we use service if the business logic is not complex, and the basically the service has access, just like in provider, it has access to this keyword. But as you may notice, the service does not return any object because service is a function constructor. So you don't need to return any object. Unlike in factory, you have to return an object. In service, you don't need. We just need to we just need to define or implement the function. So in our case, we define the function, right? This one. Okay, let me test our service. Okay, we use a value 3 for the service. Okay, then we display the model data. Okay, so that's it. Let's test the output. Okay, see the output. We have the output for provider, factory, and service. So let me um, iterate again the difference between the three. Uh, as I said earlier, we use provider if we want our service to be configurable. We have to remember also when we use the provider, we have to implement the $get method. In factory and service, we don't need to implement the $get method, but in provider, it is a must to implement this method. Then factory, we use factory if we want to encapsulate the details, because a factory returns an object, so this object can encapsulate the properties and methods. And also we have to remember, in factory we cannot access the this keyword, unlike in provider and service we can access the this keyword, right? In factory we cannot access that. Then the service is the simplest among the three. So basically, we use this if the business logic is not complex, and uh, we have to remember also that the service does not return any object. Unlike in factory, we have to return object, right? In service, we don't need to return any object. We don't need to implement also $get method, unlike in provider. Okay. So that's the use of again we use the service if the business logic is not complex. Okay, clear? So that's all, guys. Um, Happy learning. See you in my next video.